Well, I'm here in Brest, France, walking down Rue Yves Collet, which would normally be impossible because it would be packed with cars. But France is under a lockdown, so we can just pull up a chair and wait it out. So this wasn't part of our original plan, and I'm sure it wasn't part of yours either. But it's like everything has ground to a halt, and the world is caught in a storm. And it reminds me of the storm that's talked about in Acts 27 that sank Paul's prison transport ship. I don't know if you know the story, but soon after they set sail, there was a hurricane that arose that lasted for 15 days. And it got so severe that the sailors had to actually pass ropes under the boat to tie the boat together to keep it from being ripped apart in the storm. And that was only on day one. It got much worse from there. Eventually, they had to make decisions to abandon almost everything that they brought on the trip. And they were about to lose hope. In that moment, Paul, who was just a prisoner on the ship, stood up and addressed the 275 other people aboard. He said, "Men, keep your courage. Not one of us will be lost, but we're going to lose the ship." And he said, "Men, keep your courage high, because this will happen exactly as God told me it would. Nevertheless, we're going to be shipwrecked on some island." I love the way that Paul was able to combine absolute faith and absolute conviction in the faithfulness of God with the reality of the situation they were facing. He knew that it wasn't looking good and that it wasn't going to get better anytime soon. But he also knew that they were going to be okay, because never has the faithfulness of God been limited by any situation, circumstance, or storm. So it happened just as Paul said it would. Their ship sank, and they all safely washed ashore on the island of Malta. Now you have to understand, Malta was never part of their original itinerary. It wasn't like a planned stopover on their way to Rome. It was by no choice of theirs that they found themselves on Malta. Much like what's going on in the world today. You know, this global pandemic and the shutdown that's resulted, this was not by any of our choosing. This was not something that we planned for. I know for us, it wasn't part of our ministry itinerary, but yet here we find ourselves in the middle of this global event. But I believe that God has a purpose in us being here. So for Paul, on what could be considered the worst day of his life, not only was he shipwrecked, wet and cold, then he reached down to adjust the fire and a snake jumped up and bit his hand. There's this image of Paul holding his hand out and the snake dangling from it, and he cast it into the fire. But this was actually a serious situation. All the people on the island gathered around him, expecting him to panic and to go into shock and to actually swell up and die, is what the Bible says, because this snake had a very powerful venom. So they were waiting, and they were waiting, and nothing ever happened. The Bible actually says that the snake bite had no ill effect on Paul. Isn't that amazing? So, of course, now he has the attention of the whole island. They actually think he's some sort of god. So what happens is that a move of God is sparked on that island that lasts for 3 months and results in all of the sick on the island being healed. So God was able to use Paul's crisis, and I know he's going to be able to do something beautiful through this as well. But before we rush through the season and wish it's over, I invite us all to take a moment and consider that maybe this is a Malta that God has put in our path. You know, we find ourselves here not by our own design, but I do believe that it's by the design of God. Because right now, we're surrounded by people who need the life, the love, and the hope of Jesus that we carry. So it's time to deliver. It's time to open our mouths and speak words of life. It's time to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. This is our Malta moment, and I think we can embrace it. We were created for this.